One of my favorite salads of all time is kale salad. Sometimes I found that I craved it. I know it's weird, but it's so delicious. Part of the deliciousness is the special dressing recipe that I came up with. And I use the kale in such a way that it's not tough. I actually found a way to tenderize it, I guess you could call it. So I'm going to show you how to make this. It's quick, it's easy, it will last in your refrigerator for a couple days. I've made it for other people and they just say, oh my gosh, this is so good. They can't believe how good it is. Kale has just so many nutrients in it. It's one of the most nutrient-dense foods per calorie that you can get. So I'm going to show you how to make this. To make this dressing, there are only 4 ingredients. We're going to start with 3 green onions, also called scallions, and just chop off the ends after you wash it, and then cut it into 1-inch pieces, including the green. The green part is going to make this delicious dressing a light shade of green. Then the second ingredient is 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar. If you're going to use apple cider vinegar and you want to go healthy, pick something that's organic, raw, and unfiltered, like this Bragg brand. So that's 1/4 cup. The third ingredient is 1/3 cup of olive oil. And I'm using, I know, a dry measuring cup instead of a wet measuring cup, but you'll see why in a moment. And then the last ingredient is 1/3 cup of agave nectar, and that's AGAVE nectar. If you don't use agave nectar or you can't find it, you can substitute 1/3 cup of honey. And the reason I like to use this dry measuring cup is after I pour the oil out, there's a little bit of oil left in there, and the agave nectar slips right out, or honey or whatever you're using. And now we're ready to blend it. I have a super duper Vitamix blender here, but a regular blender should work for this too. And just blend it on high. Now that makes more dressing than you need for this kale salad. I'm going to pour this into a Tupperware container and set it aside, and now we'll actually make the salad. The kale I'm using for this salad is called Lacinato Kale. It's also called dinosaur kale. It's a little more smooth than the curly kale, but if you can only find curly kale for this recipe, you can use that too. Now, I got this kale recipe originally that I've now changed from Jenny Kornbleet, and I've tweaked a few things, and I did change the dressing recipe and tweaked a couple more things. But this is absolutely delicious. So now I'm going to show you a quick way to chop these leaves. Now, I like to buy it when the leaves are large. Sometimes I go to the store and the leaves are these tiny little leaves and they take a really long time to cut for the salad. So if you can find a bunch that are large, go for it. You can either tear the leaves off of their stem or you can use a large knife to cut them. I like to cut them with a knife. I find it to be quicker. You might find it to be quicker to tear them off. So if you're going to tear them, just tear them at near the stem and pull them off, or take a knife and quickly cut down away from the stem. And you can save the stems if you want. If you juice, you can do that. Now what I do is I cut 2 leaves at a time, so then I have 4 halves, and I stack them and roll them up. So I stack them lengthwise. I might fold the little ends in first, and then I roll them up fairly tightly. And I'm going to cut them in a method called chiffonade. So I like to hold it with one hand and use a large knife. and cut a few times. Now these were the biggest the leaves usually come. A lot of times, like I said, you get the leaves smaller. And then now they're cut into rolls, but I cut them even smaller and then put them in a bowl. And I already cut the rest, and now we're ready to put the dressing on. And I have it in a plastic bowl over here. And the thing is, after you put the dressing on, you need to massage it with your hands. So I take off my rings. This is how you get the kale leaves to be really tender instead of fibery. Now a little bit of this dressing goes a long way. So you can use some and taste it and see if it needs more. Because if you put on too much of this dressing, you're going to be just tasting dressing. All right, now here comes the part where you really massage this dressing with clean hands, obviously, into the leaves. This is why you use a large bowl. All right. Mine are pretty saturated. And then you wash your hands, and we'll put the rest of the ingredients in. The next ingredient is chopped red pepper. If I'm doing a full bunch of kale, then I chop up an entire red pepper into pieces about the size you see here, you know, bite size. And you can use either a yellow pepper or an orange pepper. It doesn't have to be red if that's not your favorite. I wouldn't use green. It might not be the right taste. And I like to cut off these little inside pieces. And actually my dog likes these little pieces. Just because I like it to look pretty too, besides taste good. So after this, chopping the red pepper, I'm going to put in some black olives. Now, I like black olives, but I don't like any other type of olive. If you have a favorite olive, then get that. If you like Greek olives, if you like, you know, whatever it is you like, get that. Now, I usually buy jumbo black olives, and if I buy the jumbos, I cut them into fourths, but these are probably large or extra large, which to me is kind of small. So I just cut them in half and toss them in the bowl, like I'm doing here. And the last ingredient comes after this. Normally, and in Jenny's original recipe, this salad had a handful of pine nuts. Pine nuts are delicious. I love pine nuts in this recipe. However, they are also very expensive. So I came up with an alternative, and my alternative is raw sunflower seeds. Raw means that they haven't been cooked and they're not salted. And I store them in the refrigerator. Raw sunflower seeds. I think I got, these are from Trader Joe's. They're not cooked, they're not salted. And I'm just going to take a handful, and you just have to kind of just what we call eyeball it. Put in as many as you want. If you want more later, you can put more in. And then it's time to toss it. And I didn't have my tongs. Toss the salad. And then it's ready to eat. I store it in a Tupperware type of container in the refrigerator, and sometimes after I stored it for a day or two and then I take some out for a meal, it doesn't have as much dressing as I want. Maybe some of it's just been evaporated, I don't know. So that's when I like to have some extra dressing, and I spoon a little bit on, and it's not overdone. So that is how you make kale salad.